Shalom and welcome to this special edition of the Middle East Report, where we shall be discussing the surprising and audacious Israeli airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities that is codenamed Operation Rising Line. And my special guest on today's programme is my good friend Zalmi Unsdorfer, who is the chairman of UK Likud. Absolute pleasure to see you again, Zalmi, particularly as we unpack the extraordinary events of Friday the 13th of June, where 220 Israeli military fighter jets carried out their surprising and audacious strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities and against the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and of course assassinating some of Iran's top nuclear scientists. No one saw this coming, certainly not the Iranians. Just give us your perspective on what we're seeing really unfold in the Middle East, which is truly historic.
Well, I'm old enough to remember the Six-Day War. I was 16 at that time, and I have to say that last Friday I felt the spirit of 67, because 1967 was really the last war that Israel was allowed to win, because by the time they had dealt with everything in 6 days, the world couldn't get its shoes on. The United Nations couldn't have a resolution to shut it all down, as every single one of Israel's wars has been shut down before we went and dealt the death blow, which would then, forestall all other continuing wars. How many wars we had with Gaza and with Lebanon and so forth. So I felt the spirit of 67, and it was a great, great moment.
And share with us personally how your family has been affected. I mean, congratulations with your daughter getting married last week. But share with us the problems this has caused you and your family, particularly your son, who's still out in Israel right now and has been very close to those Iranian ballistic missiles that have hit the coastal cities and towns in Israel.
Yeah, well, my son and his four little children, were booked to come on Sunday. And unfortunately, Friday, the war broke out. The airport was closed at that time just for 3 days, but I think it's been closed for substantially longer now. They were not able to attend the wedding. They could see it with a live link, but it's not the same. And it's their only sister. I have 5 boys, and it was a wonderful opportunity, but it's a small price to pay for what we have seen in removing this existential threat, which has been hanging over the state of Israel and our people for, it's got to be now like 2-3 decades. So it is what it is. And he lives in Ramat Gan, where one of the 3 big missiles hit. And he was there during the 2 previous missile attacks in October and April. And he said this one was on a different scale. He says the entire building shook. And he actually was looking up on AI to find out where in an air raid shelter, which part of the air raid shelter is the safest to put children. That's the kind of fear that you're talking about.
Absolutely. We would definitely be praying for your son and many of the others that are caught up in this crisis that Israel's facing. But share with us with this operation called Operation Rising Lion that has been over 2 decades in the making, because I've been waiting for this moment for 2 decades now, ever since the Israelis said that they will not permit Iran to achieve nuclear breakout and have nuclear weapons. The world's most dangerous regime having the world's most dangerous weapons, and of course with the Jewish people and yourself, when a regime like Iran, their supreme leader and their presidents like President Ahmadinejad threaten to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, they mean it. And so we see that Israel has taken incredible, brave and courageous action, particularly by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the bravery of the Israeli Air Force and the pilots who flew over those missions, and the incredible, audacious Mossad operations deep within Iran are absolutely remarkable. But share with us why you think that Israel has acted now.
Well, first of all, you said this was, you've been waiting for this for 20 years. Israel's been planning it for more than 20 years. And if we look at 67, in 67, the pilots of the Israeli Air Force, they knew the name of the pilot of every single Egyptian aircraft. and Syrian aircraft. They knew what family they had. They knew where they lived. They had unbelievable information. All the books that were written about the Six-Day War mentioned this kind of deep, deep, deep intel. And in this case, we heard that the Mossad had planted trucks with drones there, 10, 15 years ago. And when we saw the drone attack on Putin by Ukraine, which was a pretty audacious scheme, we thought, wow, that's brilliant. That's on a par with the Beeper attack. But nobody ever saw this. That, we had been planning this same kind of thing 20 years ago and installing trucks and so forth full of drones. So it is something that's been long in the waiting and even longer in the planning. But unfortunately, countries like France, Britain, and other European countries were too interested in trading with Iran and getting lucrative contracts with Iran than applying real sanctions against it. And they weren't in the front line. They had not been threatened with being a one-bomb nation. That was the most famous thing. I think it was one of the Ayatollahs had said that. And you mentioned Ahmadinejad. Yes, hateful character. But the news wires are full of stories that he was assassinated with his family in the streets of Tehran. Whether it was us or whether it was disenchanted Iranians, we won't know. But that would not be any loss to the world.
No, absolutely. I just want to describe how Adrian Bloomfield, who's writing for The Telegraph under this headline, how tiny Israel brought Iran to its knees. And he writes the following: much of its high command lies dead beneath the rubble. Its once vented air defences have been swept aside with almost contemptuous ease. Its terrified civilians are fleeing the capital in their thousands, heedless of the pleas to stand firm against the enemy. Long regarded as a mighty power in the Middle East, feared and grudgingly respected by neighbours and rivals, Iran's aspirations for regional homogeneity have been destroyed in just 5 days by a country a tenth of its population and 80th of its landmass. In many ways, the opening salvos of war more than a decade in the making have gone better than Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, could have hoped. 11 of Iran's generals have been killed, along with at least half a dozen top nuclear scientists. Israel has rapid air superiority, giving it a broad freedom to strike Tehran and other key locations at will. Uncover Mossad operations that have helped to destroy more than 120 ballistic missile launchers using off-the-shelf drones smuggled into the country in suitcases. More covert action is likely. We have a wide variety of tools up our sleeves, says the IDF Defence Force spokesman. Far from projecting strength, the Ayatollah Khamenei have rarely looked weaker. I think that just really does describe the situation that the Iranians are in. But surely the big question is, why didn't the Iranian leadership learn from what happened to Hezbollah when the Israelis completely dismantled the jewel in the crown of the Iranian regime, which was Hezbollah, last autumn, and now Israel's doing exactly the same to the Iranian regime itself within Iran?
I think God is showing his people, look what I can do. I mean, you said Benjamin Netanyahu would have, or that writer said, even Benjamin Netanyahu would have been surprised that things went so quickly and so successfully. Well, if you've got God as an ally, the Torah says, Hashem yilachem lachem va'atem tacharishon. God will fight for you and you just be quiet. Those are words from the Bible. And there is clearly anything that goes against the laws of nature in this tiny, tiny country with virtually no resources other than brains. I mean, Iran sits on oceans of oil and gas. All right, we recently discovered some oil and some gas fields offshore, but that wasn't the case, 10, 20 years ago. And I always remark that when we gave up the Sinai desert in a peace deal, we had oil wells in the Sinai, and we had to give them up to sit up as for peace. Those are valuable oil wells. And what happened? A couple of years later, somebody discovers huge gas fields offshore. And that's another one of God's sayings. And v'nasati geshamim be'itam. I will provide the rains in their proper time. And this is what happens in the Holy Land.
No, it's absolute miracle. So let's have a look now. This excellent, slick video produced by friends at the Israeli Foreign Ministry, entitled "When Enemies Vow to Destroy You, Act First." And Israel certainly did.
Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. I want to assure the civilized world, we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapons. The increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Remember, Iran calls Israel the small Satan. It calls America the great Satan. Never again is now. Today, Israel has shown that we have learned the lessons of history. When enemies vow to destroy you, believe them. When enemies build weapons of mass death, stop them. As the Bible teaches us, when someone comes to kill you, rise and act first.
Thanks to the courage and the bravery of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, together with the Israeli Air Force and pilots who took part in the missions over the skies of Iran, and also the incredible operations carried out by the Mossad. Not only is Israel a safer place today, but the world is also a safer place. So thank you, Israel. Toda Rabah. I just want to give your thoughts on the code name for this special operation called Operation Rising Lion. And it has its significance in the book of Numbers in the Bible, chapter 23, verse 24, that says, "Look, a people rise like a lioness and lift itself up like a lion. I shall not lie down until it devours the prey and drinks the blood of the slain." Give us your interpretation of the code name Rising Lion as it's based on Numbers chapter 23, verse 24, Zalmi.
Well, I think the preceding verse basically says that there shall be no divination against Jacob, nor any evil intent against Israel, and that I will stand with Israel and I will dispatch their enemies. And then the lion, rising lion metaphor. Yes, it's a sign of courage, and it is also a sign that it is a heavenly power that is not letting the enemies prevail. And we say this, every Seder night, every Jewish person who sits at the Seder night, one of the most important and one of the most emotional pieces of the Seder liturgy is what's called V'hisha Amda, which is, and this is what has stood for us in the generations, that in every generation someone rises up to destroy us and God delivers us from them. This goes on time after time, and I'm old enough to know many threats that came up in one decade after another. Ahmadinejad was just one of them. Okay, we've had lots of them, and they've all been dispatched. And you look at the Arch of Titus in Rome, and you see the carvings of the Romans taking away the artifacts of the Jewish temple. And people go there and they shout underneath the arch. You see, "Where are you, Titus? Where are you? Where are you, Roman Empire? We're here, but where are you?" Absolutely,
and I think the same could be said for this, the Islamic Republic of Iran and its supreme leader Khamenei and the rest of this vile regime. It's interesting actually that based on this scripture that Mark Dubovich, who I've had the pleasure to meet, is the director of a fantastic think tank in Washington DC called the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. I've visited their offices quite a few times. I know excellent experts on Israel and the Middle East. And he wrote for the Daily Mail recently. And this is what he said regarding the scripture in Numbers 23, verse 24. He says, "The flag of the pre-Islamic Republic featured emblems of the sun and the lion. Israel's message to the long oppressed Iranian people is that this is an opportunity for them to take back their country from the supreme leader Ali Khamenei and his totalitarian regime. Indeed, Netanyahu addressed the long-suffering Iranian people in their first remarks announcing the operation. Share your thoughts on that, but also share on your thoughts that 80% of the Iranian people are against the regime, and many of them have been shouting down with the dictator. Many of them have come out and expressed their support for Israel, despite the fact that Israel is bombing their nation.
Well, this is the thing that worries me most of all. This really does worry me. Because, and maybe it's because this campaign has happened so fast, and you need to understand that where it comes to deliverance in Jewish scripture, it happens very, very fast. So we take the story of Joseph, right? In the evening, he's in a dungeon in Egypt. And in the morning, he's appointed Viceroy of Egypt just because he interpreted dreams. That's how quickly it happens. And this is the same thing. It's happened so quickly. I think the Iranians have been, good Iranian citizens have been very slow to catch up. And if they don't start mass demonstrations to overthrow this regime, then there may well be some kind of a deal done that keeps the regime or some form of another alive, and that is our worst nightmare. We want the Iranian people to be free because they are very much like us, and we can trade with them, and this axis of evil, this head of the octopus, which is what we are now smashing, must never be allowed to regenerate. And whether they bomb them or whether they exile them, I don't care. But the people have to stand up and be counted.
And share with us the difference between the Israelis and the Iranian regime. We've seen very clearly that the Israelis have targeted military sites, nuclear sites, the heads of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, but they haven't targeted the civilian population. Even though we see now that Tehran is coming under attack, and we're seeing, as of this recording now, the whole population of Tehran fleeing the city after Donald Trump told them to leave. But we see the Iranians in direct response deliberately targeting civilian areas, particularly Israel's main population areas, which is Tel Aviv, Herzliya, and of course Bet Yam, that was very, very badly hit last Sunday.
Well, you know, there's no pain, no gain. You know, we expected that. And I reckon that if you asked Netanyahu, or if you looked at the cabinet minutes, whenever they're released 100 years from now, you'll probably see vast estimates of casualties expected during this campaign. So mercifully, by the grace of God, we are well ahead of schedule, okay? And yes, Iran targets civilians indiscriminately, following the same thing that happens in Gaza. But interesting to note that, have you ever heard of Israel firing any kind of missile, ground-to-ground missile into Iran? No. Or even into Gaza? No. When we fire a missile, we know exactly where it's going. And you see that at a range of 1,500 miles, the head of the IRGC, gets killed on the 12th floor of an apartment building with a hole in his wall, and everything else is intact. That's what the IDF is. Not smash the whole building down or the whole street down. So that's the difference, as you say.
And there's an interesting, amusing joke that's going around social media, doing the rounds at the moment, saying that no one in Iran knows where the supreme leader of Iran is, Khamenei, but the Israelis do. Share with us the real infiltration of the Mossad, that they've been able to completely infiltrate this regime. They can't trust one another. They don't feel safe. And now there are threats being made against the supreme leader, and he must be probably the most scared person in the world right now.
Well, you know, first of all, as far as things are going on the internet about the Mossad is concerned, the best one that I heard was yesterday, where they said that they had knocked out the Mossad building. And so somebody tweeted, well, was there any casualties in the building? And somebody answered, no, all the Mossad people were in Iran. So you know, it is. Trump has said we're not going to kill Khamenei himself, or don't kill Khamenei himself. Why, I don't know. But personally, the guy's 86 years old. He's ill. He's not going to be around very much longer. If you're asking me, I would much prefer to take out his son. He's got a son, an heir. His name is Motjab. And I want Khamenei, I want to see him bury a child, just like Israelis and Americans and some Europeans have had to bury their children as a result of terror exported by that regime. That would be a much better thing. Trump has said, hands off Khamenei. Fine. He hasn't said hands off his son, and I'd really like to see his son taken out, because he has been designated as the heir.
So let's see now how Israel is actually using precision-guided missiles that Zalmi has so eloquently described in taking out their enemies, in complete contrast to that of the Iranian regime. And this is thanks to our friends at the Israeli Foreign Ministry.
A fanatical regime firing missiles at civilians while racing toward nuclear weapons. While Iran deliberately targets cities, Israel acts with precision to dismantle the threat. The operation is achieving extraordinary results. Nuclear facilities struck, uranium production disrupted, ballistic missiles systems destroyed. Terror architects behind the elimination of Israel plan eliminated. Israel targets only military and terror sites, not civilians. But the threat remains. Critical sites are still active. Facilities and missiles must be dismantled. We will finish the mission for our people, for humanity. Israel does what must be done.
Iran's ballistic missile program isn't just a threat to Israel. It's a threat to Europe and the Western world. Iran is developing missiles with ranges of approximately 4,000 kilometers. That places Europe within the regime's striking distance. Iran continues to advance its missile technology with ever-expanding range, with missiles capable of carrying conventional or even nuclear payloads. This isn't tomorrow's threat, it's today's reality. The threat posed by the Iranian regime must be stopped. Israel does what must be done.
And it's sad to think that in today's world, it's only Israel that has the bravery and the courage to confront the evil that is the Iranian regime and their nuclear weapons program. And today, the world is a safer place, thanks to the Jewish state. And to echo that, Zalmi, I mean, the world has lost its complete moral compass, because if it hadn't, then our Western leaders in Europe, in Canada and elsewhere would be congratulating Benjamin Netanyahu from saving the world from a nuclear holocaust, because we see that Israel has saved the world twice before. They destroyed Saddam Hussein's nuclear weapons program in the early 80s, despite the fact that President Ronald Reagan condemned Israel for it. We also see that Israel took out President Assad's in Syria's nuclear weapons program. And now Israel is doing it again, making the world a safer place. But where is the support from our Prime Minister, from the EU, from the G7? It's pretty much silent, isn't it?
It is, and as I mentioned, it's about money in terms of trade. And it is about a feeling that it's not our war, it's, you know, it's Israel's survival we're talking about. You know, we don't think it's going to have anything to do with us. And yes, as the Chancellor of Germany said, or the Foreign Minister of Germany said, you know, Israel is doing the world's dirty work. And he basically pats Israel on the back. I don't think we'll see Keir Starmer doing that, and certainly not Mr. Macron, because they have to speak to their street, and increasingly the European street is a pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, pro-jihad street, which is enjoying all the benefits of Western society and trying to overthrow it at the same time.
Yeah, but the lesson they don't learn, and they need to learn fast, is that the enemies of Israel are our enemies as well, and that Israel's on the front line. And if they destroy Israel, then the West is next. And this is something that they don't understand. But give us your thoughts on what our Foreign Secretary David Lammy said in the House of Commons this week that was reported by the Daily Mail. Effectively, he said that the Israeli Air Force mission was pointless and has asked both sides to step back and show restraint. The same message has been echoed by Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He said in the House of Commons, this is David Lammy, ours is a hard-headed assessment of how best to tackle this grave threat fundamentally. No military action can put an end to Iran's nuclear capabilities. Is David Lammy living in cloud cuckoo land, because this is exactly what's happening now with military action? And does he want to be deceived by the Iranian regime with its lies, its deceptions, its cover-up, to think that they have been lying to the world for decades now of its nuclear weapons program? And finally, Trump and Netanyahu have had enough.
Look, I can only express my personal opinion. And
Please
that
do.
is that David Lammy is an imbecile. It's not just on Israel, on anything. He's totally unqualified to be foreign secretary of the country, and he is a gross, gross embarrassment to this country. And, you know, he's part of the Labour front bench, and if Keir Starmer hasn't moved him, that shows that, you know, he doesn't care if this country becomes a laughingstock. And you have to understand that what's empowered the Iranians so much is all this tolerance that's been given to Iran over the years, including Obama sending barrel loads and pallet loads of cash.
Billions.
Billions of cash to Iran. You know, the leftists, you know, in all of the time that I've been involved in, you know, Zionist politics and so forth, the one thing I can tell you is the difference between left and right is that the left just simply do not have a concept of evil. They do not understand that there is a thing called evil in the world, that there are people who are evil, and they're not going to ever be like us, no matter what you give them, no matter how much training you put in, or whatever programs that they have in this country to, what is it called, prevent, or whatever the case may be. There is pure evil in the world. And the Jewish nation was given the job to be what? What did Isaiah say? The light unto the nations. Well, the nations are very dark right now. We have a Generation Z, which is really, in many sectors of it, completely moronic. They're demonstrating for Hamas. They don't know where Palestine is. They don't know what river it is, what sea it is. They go queers for Palestine, where they could literally be hanged, thrown off building. I mean, they are morons, and therefore you have a foreign secretary who is an imbecile. You have a large proportion of Generation Z who are moronic, have no idea of what's going on. And we have this tiny little country, tiny little nation, which is 1/10% of the world population, which has to be the light unto those nations.
Yeah. I'm talking about the Israeli Prime Minister. Benjamin Netanyahu, his legacy is pretty much secure now, isn't it? Because he vowed that he would be the one that would destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program, that Iran would not pose a threat to Israel anymore. We've seen under his leadership the dismantlement of the jewel in the crown of the Iranian regime, Hezbollah. We've seen effectively Hamas virtually destroyed in Gaza, which are both terror proxies of the Iranian regime. We've seen the collapse of President Assad's regime in Syria. And now it looks like the Iranian regime is collapsing, and it certainly has felt an incredible damage that may put back Iran's nuclear program for a decade. We know it's not going to be completely wiped out. We need American help for that. But share with us your thoughts on the bravery and the courage of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to take decisive and courageous action on behalf of his people.
Well, he has a great military career, and he has a tremendous sense of Jewish history that he got from his father, who was a historian, a Jewish historian. And his whole family are committed. You know, obviously his brother was the hero of Entebbe, and features very largely in Bibi's autobiography, which I guess he's going to have to rewrite in almost the same volume of pages over this. But you know, it breaks my heart to see this man, this giant on the world stage. I mean, he is a world leader. He is a commander-in-chief like no other. And it breaks my heart to see these pygmies, former prime ministers who served maybe 8 months or 10 months, Bennett, Olmert, Ehud Barak, the shortest serving prime minister who served about as many months as Bibi has served years. And they are so jealous of him, right, that they keep stirring up all these demonstrations. And cynically, they have they have commandeered the hostage square people, because remember there was these judiciary demonstrations of the reform of the judiciary, and then came October 7th. So these guys had no oxygen any longer because no one was interested in the judiciary thing because they had October the 7th. So what did they do? They took over the entirety of Hostage Square and politicized it, that it was an anti-Bibi thing, that the hostages are all Bibi's fault and they're not being brought out because of Bibi. And this is a man who, I don't know how much he sleeps at night. This guy is...
I'm told not very much. I'm told not very much.
Yeah,
3 or 4 hours apparently.
Yeah.
So let's have a look now at the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu talking about Operation Rising Lion.
I want to start by wishing a double happy birthday. First, happy birthday to you, President Donald J. Trump. You've been an extraordinary leader, decisive, courageous, clear vision, clear action. You have done great things for Israel. You've been an extraordinary friend to the Jewish state and to me personally. We've known each other for many years, and we appreciate what you're doing now, helping protect Israeli lives against the criminal regime in Iran. I want to wish also a 250th happy birthday to the American Army. The men and women of the armed services of the United States have protected freedom for 2.5 centuries. We would not have a free world without you. Thank you on behalf of free peoples everywhere. Today, Israel is defending freedom in the Middle East and beyond. We're doing so against a tyrannical and radical Iranian regime that wants to build atomic bombs to destroy us and wants to build ballistic missiles, including intercontinental ballistic missile, to be able to threaten anyone and everywhere in the world. By defending ourselves, we're also defending others. We're defending our Arab neighbors, our Arab friends in peace. We're defending Europe. We're helping defend also the United States, which helps us all the time in our defense. This is an important mission. Right now, the Iranian regime is bombing our civilian neighborhoods while we are targeting the terrorists. Now, this is not new. They've tried to assassinate President Trump twice. They bombed American embassies. They killed 241 Marines in Beirut. They killed and injured thousands of Americans with their IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan. They burn the American flag. They chant endlessly, "Death to America." Our enemy is your enemy. And by doing what we're doing, we're dealing with something that will threaten all of us sooner or later. Our victory will be your victory. How do we intend to achieve that victory? Well, we've already done great things. We've taken out their senior military leadership. We've taken out their senior technologists who are leading the race to build atomic weapons that would threaten us, but not only us. We've done all that and many other things. But we are also aware of the fact that there's more to be done. So we're preparing. We paved the way to Tehran, and our pilots over the skies of Tehran will deal blows to the Ayatollah regime that they cannot even imagine. And I can tell you this. We have indications that senior leaders in Iran are already packing their bags. They sense what's coming. I'll tell you what would have come if we hadn't acted. We had information that this unscrupulous regime was planning to give the nuclear weapons that they would develop to their terrorist proxies. That's nuclear terrorism on steroids. That would threaten the entire world. This is what Israel is doing with the support, the clear support of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the American people, and many others in the world. So with God's help, and with the goodwill and resolution of all free societies, we shall win.
And thank you, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, for your bravery and your courage and your leadership in leading the Jewish people against the vile, evil regime that is the Islamic Republic of Iran. I have to bring in, I think, into the discussion, Zalmi, God's providence. Because ever since October the 7th, we've seen the Middle East play out like a chessboard. And we've seen, for example, the Israelis virtually destroy Hamas in Gaza, and then the incredible operation to destroy Hezbollah last September and October with the bleepers. and also with the walkie-talkies that took out the leadership of Hezbollah, including the incredible assassination of Sheikh Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. Then we saw the collapse of Assad's regime in Syria. And now we see that Israel has won air superiority, destroyed most of the Iran's nuclear weapons program. And now the regime is running for its life, and it's almost checkmate. Give us your thoughts on how, for example, had it not been for Israel's actions after October the 7th, or if Israel had taken out Iran's nuclear facilities this time without removing the threat from Hamas and Hezbollah and from Syria and also that from the Houthis, we'd be looking at a totally different scenario altogether now.
Yeah, and October the 7th, everyone asked, where was God on October the 7th? Now, there's a famous biblical section where Moses says to God, I'd like to see you. I'd like to see your face. And God says, anyone who sees my face will not live. But I'll put you behind this rock, and you will see in the crack in the rock me passing, and you will not see my face, but you will see my back. And most of the commentators, the Hebrew commentators, have said, this means that you never see God coming in the moment. But you will see that as things play out, you'll see that he was there. And he was there on October the 7th, but without Sinwar, Iran would not be destroyed today. That's, put it very simply, you know, two parentheses, Sinwar on this side and the end of Iran on the other side. Everything in between has resulted in that chain of events, which was clearly, you know, divinely planned. That's the way I look at it.
No, it's quite incredible. The whole burning bush story. I suppose from my perspective as well is seeing that he who watches over Israel neither numbers nor sleeps. God never sleeps when it comes to Israel. He never sleeps when it comes to his people. He will allow evil for a certain period of time to flourish. Then he says, enough is enough, and I execute my judgment. And the same way, for example, that ancient Babylon fell with the writing on the wall, prophesied in the book of Daniel, and the next day Babylon was destroyed and taken over by the Persian and Mede Empire. So we see that God is able to raise up empires and destroy them and raise up new ones. And again, we see, for example, the lesson of history that those nations that come against Israel and the Jewish people never survive. And that's what's extraordinary. But share with us how, for example, Zalmi, for the past 46 years, this Iranian regime has built up a terror proxies with Hamas, with Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis, helped to establish ISIS, coordinated with Al-Qaeda in order to destroy Israel for the past 46 years. They even modeled their army and their intelligence on Israel's security forces, and the Mossad did a complete replica and have put all their resources and efforts into destroying Israel. And now it's Iran and the Iranian regime that's been destroyed. Share with us your thoughts.
Well, you know, 6 months ago, after, you know, we were halfway through this hostage crisis. Israel was still number 3 in the happiness scale, the world's happiness scale. Okay, and when I'm in Israel, and you know, I have been several times since October the 7th, you walk down the street, people have got smiles on their faces, they greet each other and so forth. I don't see that on British streets. I don't see that kind of feeling. And it is, maybe you would call it one family, but we have all kinds of people in Israel. We have Russian emigres speaking Russian. We have, you know, all kinds of people, and it's the spirit of the Jewish people that is driving things ahead. And when reserves are called up, and 109% comes forward, and then you have a Pew Research poll which says that of Britain, if Britain was invaded, would you serve? And only like 22% agreed that they would serve in the army. The rest said we would leave. Well, doesn't that tell you everything?
Absolutely. So let's see now, thanks to the IDF, the terror proxies that Iran had built up to destroy Israel, and now they themselves have been destroyed.
Iran isn't just a threat to Israel, they're a threat to the entire world. For years, they've outsourced terror like it's a business model, arming proxies to do their dirty work across the globe. Their terror campaign didn't start with Israel. 1983, Beirut, 241 American servicemen killed by Hezbollah, one of Iran's favorite proxies. 1992, Buenos Aires, Iranian-backed terrorists bombed the Israeli embassy, killing 29 and injuring 200. 1994, again Buenos Aires, same playbook. A Jewish center bombed, 85 people dead. And yes, the Iranian regime's fingerprints are all over it. 2012, Bangkok, a botched Iranian assassination attempt on Israeli diplomats. Although it was a failure, the intent was loud and clear. 2015, Iran supplied weapons and training to Houthi rebels, leading to attacks on Saudi Arabia and other regional targets. 2020, we can't forget, Iran launched ballistic missiles at US military bases in Iraq. See the pattern? This isn't just about the Middle East. Iran's reach is global. Their proxies, plans, and explosives span continents. You can ignore it until their terror reaches you.
Israel targets military threats. The Iranian regime targets civilians. While Iran fires on cities, aiming at families and children, Israel struck over 100 nuclear facilities, missile systems, and military command centers. Top Iranian military commanders were eliminated. This was a necessary strike to stop the world's most dangerous regime from getting the world's most dangerous weapon. Israel is doing what must be done.
So that was thanks to the IDF and the Israeli Foreign Ministry, and thanks to the IDF, we know that the world is a safer place right now. Just share with us your thoughts, really. And again, this is a kind of history lesson, that whenever empires or nations come up and rise up against Israel and the Jewish people, and you see within their totalitarian ideology, at the very heart of it, is the hatred for the Jewish people, very much like the Third Reich. And yet, when they come and God says enough is enough, you know, they're the ones that are no longer around. Those empires are consigned to the dustbin of history. And yet the Jewish people live. Share with us how this is absolutely remarkable. And we see the providence of God working when it comes to Israel today, that the God of Israel, Adonai Se'avot, has said, enough is enough of the hatred and the desire to destroy my people and my land. I'm striking now.
Well, you know, I've always said that we're an endangered species, and that's why we need Israel. We need our game reserve. And you know something? Usually the most beautiful animals are the ones that are most hunted. It's true. I don't know what it is about human nature, and it is human nature. They're the hunters, right? That wants to destroy, that seeks to destroy beautiful things, and they're trying to destroy us in every single generation. In this case, the Islamic doctrine is that once a piece of land has been under Islamic control, it must never ever be under anyone else's control. Now, of course, under the Turkish Empire, Israel, which was then called Palestine, as it had been named by the Romans, was under Ottoman control, and they claim that this is, you know, we can't have a single Jewish foot standing in the land of what is now Israel. So, you know, it's a pipe dream. They'll never succeed.
And we know that the situation, as of today's recording, is moving so fast and so rapid. I mean, we had amusing scenes when the Israelis took out Iran's national TV station, pumping out propaganda on behalf of the regime, in order to encourage the people of Iran to rise up. But share with us your thoughts now that US President Donald Trump might actually get involved now and deliver the bombs needed to destroy those nuclear facilities that are deep underground in the mountains of Iran that need to be destroyed to prevent Iran from ever having the capacity to ever build nuclear weapons ever again.
Yeah, I think we're talking about Fordo, which is built, you know, half a mile deep under a mountain, and yes, the only armament is a massive bomb which can only be delivered by a B-2 bomber, and there are several in Diego Garcia. Trump doesn't want America to be involved because the majority of his congressional party just are America first, don't get involved. Somebody said by using the precedent of Roosevelt during the war, that, okay, don't go into the war, but lend lease the tools to Churchill. And maybe Trump will agree to lend us a B-2 bomber or a couple of B-2 bombers to the IDF, and we'll finish the job. He doesn't have to be involved.
That's a very good suggestion. Also, what do you make of the incredible message that Mike Huckabee, America's ambassador to Israel, gave to Donald Trump, telling him the only voice that he needs to hear is that of God, and that God has placed President Trump in this position for such a time as this?
That Mike Huckabee is something else. He really spoke truth to power. And it could have gone horribly wrong, but Trump actually then retweeted what Huckabee had said, word for word. And that's exactly, it's not just about being on the right side of history, but it's being on the side of good versus evil. And what we've seen in Iran is evil, and we are seeing the destruction of the world's greatest evil, and all of its tentacles have already been cut off. It's amazing. The Middle East will be so different. And when we came out of Egypt, God said to Moses, God said to the children of Israel at the Red Sea, look at the Egyptians now, because you will never see them looking like that ever again. And then, of course, they all perished in the Red Sea.
So let's have a look at the latest news report from CBN that looks at the prospect that the United States might get involved to actually finish the job off for Israel, to prevent Iran ever having nuclear weapons, ever threatening Israel or the free world again.
As he left Canada, Trump wrote on Truth Social, Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. A massive exodus of people are fleeing Iran's capital, as Israeli officials also urged thousands of people in Tehran on Monday to evacuate ahead of airstrikes. There are reports Iran is sending urgent signals to end the war and resume nuclear talks if the U.S. does not join the fight. Talking to ABC News, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he doesn't see signs Iran is serious about ending the war.
Well, we're going to see if Iran is serious about dismantling their nuclear program, dismantling their missile capacity, dismantling the terror axis that terrorizes everybody in the Middle East and well beyond. If they agree to all of that, obviously, the war could end. If they lay down their arms, they lay down their weapons of mass death, that's different. But so far, they haven't done it.
Netanyahu also said Israel will not rule out targeting the Ayatollah because taking him out would end the conflict. The IDF says it's hit more than 250 targets across Iran, estimating it's destroyed a third of the regime's ballistic missile launchers and continues to strike military infrastructure, surface-to-surface missiles, and UAVs. As in Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen, Israel sent evacuation warnings to civilians in Tehran to avoid military targets. In the middle of a program, the IDF also hit the IRIB, Iran's state broadcaster, considered a key propaganda arm of the regime.
The center's activities were carried out under the direct guidance and mission of the Revolutionary Guard. For years, the Revolutionary Guard has called for the destruction of the State of Israel and genocide.
Monday night, Netanyahu said the campaign is far from over.
We have more goals, and we're really going to do a root canal here. We're changing the face of the Middle East, and this can lead to far-reaching changes, even within Iran itself.
Iran today is seeing the fastest growth of Christianity than in any other country in the world today, and they are on fire.
CBN's George Thomas has reported extensively on the underground church in Iran.
The church is on fire. The Iranian regime is scared to death of the rising evangelical movement inside the country. Not so much about a threat, that they want to depose the regime politically, but they want to bring a new spirit to the country. And there's a tremendous prayer movement that has been unleashed across Iran for many, many years. So many people seeing dreams and visions, seeing Jesus Christ in dreams and visions.
He says believers inside Iran need prayer now more than ever.
So pray for continued boldness and the strength and the courage in the days ahead, because you know the regime, when they're cornered, when they're under the spotlight and under the gun, so to speak, they tend to take their frustration and their anger on their own people.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Great report there, put together by a friend, Chris Mitchell at CBN, and we certainly do need to pray for Christians in Iran and also Christians who are fighting and Iranians against this vile, evil regime in Tehran. It does look like the regime's days are numbered, and again, it almost looks like we could read any book in the Bible to realise what we're seeing is really showing us that we are living in truly biblical times. And I guess, again, being a broadcast journalist, the one thing I see constantly is the scripture that God gave to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, 1-3, that I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. And again, we're seeing that there is no other nation that has cursed Israel more than the Islamic Republic of Iran and this regime. There's no other nation that has wanted to destroy Israel as much as Iran. And now their days are numbered. Yeah. Just elaborate how really we're seeing God's word come alive today, and that God is fulfilling his word by destroying the enemies of Israel and also the enemies of the West.
Yeah, they had billions in oil and resources, and they could have been a totally different situation. But their hatred is so completely subsuming. Anti-Semitism at its root is so subsuming that they would literally use up all of the resources of a very rich country just to make a nuclear weapon to wipe out a tiny Jewish state the size of New Jersey. It's a truism, and it's not going to be the last regime that rises up to get us. But one thing I can tell you, they will also fall.
Absolutely. But describe how there are similarities between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the leadership together with the Nazis, because they share that same ideology, but this time it's an infusion of Nazism and Islamic extremism with the one goal of destroying the nation of Israel and the Jewish people.
Well, it was before Israel was formed. You know, Adolf Hitler was meeting Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, plotting as to how the Jews who were then in Palestine could be liquidated, and it was going to be a pogrom, a jihad against them. So yeah, those roots go all the way back. In fact, they say that the name Iran, because it used to be called Persia, but the name Iran comes from the name Aryan, which is the Nazi supermensch. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But anti-Semitism is something that will always be with us until the days of the Messiah.
Absolutely. And share what you told me before we went live with this broadcast today, Zalmi, and the fact that there's some dispute whether the Iranians or the Indians invented chess. But share with us how, for example, Checkmate, and this is definitely where Israel has the Iranian regime right now, is Checkmate. Share with us how this is actually translated from the Persian, and how the Iranians are the master class when it comes to playing chess, but they've been outplayed this time by Israel.
Yes, they have. They're very patient people. You know, they've been building this nuclear thing up for decades. Checkmate is slang for shachmat. Shachmat means shah, mat. Mat is mem taf, which is mace, which means dead. And Shah is, as you know, the Shah of Iran was the king of Iran. And when the king is destroyed in the chess game, then you say the king is dead. Shah, mate. Shah is dead. So first the queen went. The queen are the crown jewels, his nuclear program. They've been wiped out. And hopefully within a few days, the king, Mr. Khamenei, or maybe his family, will also be toppled. That's what we want.
And share with us how, if a new regime emerges and there's new hope for the Iranian people, because they're not like the Arabs. The Iranian people are incredibly sophisticated. They're in many ways very much like the Jewish people. This is an ancient culture, ancient traditions, ancient understanding, of course, we remember the Cyrus the Great as well, that Iran, new Iran, could emerge out of the shadows and out of the ashes of the Islamic Republic of Iran to become Israel's greatest ally in the Middle East, as it was in the 70s prior to the fall of the Shah and the rise of the Islamic Revolution.
Well, Persians hate being called Arabs by accident. People just throw the Arabs into one pot. Also, you should know that attendance at mosques has plummeted under the Iranian regime, and the attendance at Zoroastrian places of worship has rocketed. That's what people want. And like I say, my biggest worry is that the good Iranian people will be late to the party, because we cannot afford to have an agreement made with any remnant of this thing. As happened with, remember, Saddam's party, Saddam's Baathists were still retained in Iraq after Bush destroyed Saddam and whatever else. But they can't, Iraq is still a basket case. Can't afford for that to happen. What needs to happen is the people need to rise up, and the Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi, needs to come back in splendor. And of course, we all remember who incubated Ayatollah Ruhollah Khamenei. That was France. We have to thank France for importing this dreadful regime into Iran.
Absolutely. So within 30 seconds, Zalmi, would you pay a brave tribute to the pilots, the men and women of the Israeli Air Force, and the audacious and brave and courageous Mossad operations that have been carried out inside Syria that have enabled Israel to win air superiority and to take out Iran's nuclear weapons program?
Well, all I can say is what we say in the synagogues every day, which is the prayer for the IDF. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless the fighters of the Israel Defense Force who stand guard over our land and the cities of our God, from the border of Lebanon to the desert of Egypt, and from the great sea unto the approach of the Arava, on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May Hashem cause the enemies who rise up against us to be struck down before them. May the Holy One, blessed be He, preserve and rescue our fighting men from every trouble and distress, and from every plague and illness, and may He send blessing and success in every endeavor. May He lead our enemies under their sway, and may He grant them salvation and crown them with victory. And may there be fulfilled for them the verse, for it is Hashem, your God, who goes with you to battle, goes with you to battle your enemies, for you to save you.
Amen. What a prayer. Zalmi, thank you so much for being my special guest on this special program as we mark the downfall of the Iranian regime. And thank you for watching this program at home. What we've been seeing on our TV screens over the past week has been nothing less than extraordinary. It is definitely a case where small David has taken on Goliath, but we know that Israel hasn't done this alone. And so we thank the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, known as Yahweh or Adonai Se'avot, the Lord of armies, for Israel's deliverance in destroying her enemies. So thank you for watching this week's Middle East Report.